Boonville attorney Peyton Hayden. That astonished Mark Rivas, who then owned Sant. Rivas hired 3 lawyers, Austin King, later a governor of Missouri, Abiel Leonard, later a member of the Missouri Supreme Court, and John Gordon, later the head of the Boone County Bar Association. Regardless, Sant won, despite fears that his case would stir up other slaves and despite bitter prejudice against any slave who had the nerve to challenge his master in court. Rivas felt he'd been defrauded of his property. He decided to recapture his former slave and have him taken to the South and sold back into slavery. It happened often. It was a practice called slave running. Rivas arranged with slave buyer Ned Camplin to take Sant south, with Camplin paying $1,200 for him. Then, with the help of a number of prominent citizens of the area, they caught Sant, they put him in irons, and they waited for the riverboat. But they had no way of knowing that cosmic forces were working against them. Schwitzler wrote that something happened the likes of which had not occurred again as the group dashed from the woods toward the river. The countryside turned bright. Schwitzler said that the earth and the river seemed to be on fire. The men could see clearly the boat in midstream and the hills beyond. It so frightened the group that they freed Sant and ran to their homes. They feared it was Judgment Day, and they had been caught engaging in a business of little virtue. Sant and the others fell to their knees and prayed. Now, what had happened was a giant meteor shower, one of the largest in recorded history. It was visible throughout the eastern and central parts of North America. Boyd Shoemaker wrote that many frontier Christians who had been brought up believing in the Second Coming looked upon it as a showing of divine power, just as had Rivas, Sant, and the others. Fur trapper Zenas Leonard with the Joseph Walker Party in California wrote that his group was thrown into great consternation by the star shower. Soon after dark, the air appeared to be completely thickened with meteors falling towards the earth, some of which would explode in the air and others would be dashed to pieces in the ground, frightening our horses so much that it required the most active vigilance of the whole company to keep them together. In Columbia, residents were awakened in the middle of the night by the ringing of a bell in the Gentry Tavern. Such a warning struck fear in the minds of some who were afraid of massive fires or Indian raids or outbreaks of disease. When they peered out their windows, it appeared to be daylight, although it was 4 a.m. Sant is said to have gone to Santa Fe, married a Mexican woman, and become the richest mulatto in that area. His brothers and his sisters weren't as lucky, though. They were living in Sedalia with Solomon Rivas, and when the results of the Columbia trial became known, they immediately were run south. The great star shower, inspirational to some, fearful to others, meant freedom to at least one on this date, the 13th of November in 1833.
What this show needs is more power. Welcome back to Studio 27 on this late Wednesday night / Thursday morning. And coming up in a moment, I'll have the latest in news for you from some source, probably NPR, most likely, or Fox, or maybe both, as well as news of the weird, popular tweets of the day, and the song of the day still to come. And it reminds me a little bit ago when I played the Hump song, the Bob Seger and the Silver Bullet Band and Against the Wind. Years ago, I dated a girl who got mad at me every time I played that song on the radio because she knew, she thought I was depressed whenever I played it. And I admit it is somewhat of a depressing song, but for me it was an uplifting song because it does bring back some good memories. At least, you know, a mixture of good and bad memories. But I was just thinking of Kim when I was playing that song and thinking of the fights. I'm like, really? You're going to nitpick over that? Anyway, right now, though, it's time for market information, and this is a long report, so I hope you have some time, because it's going to be quite in-depth, all right? This will give me a chance to do some other things around the house, like, I'm going to play on my phone for a while. So we'll be back with the news in 30 minutes.
For the Land Grant University in Urbana-Champaign, Illinois, this is the closing market report. It is the 13th day of November 2013. I'm Todd Gleason. Coming up in this half hour, we'll talk about the commodity markets with Jackie Fake. She's at Stuart Peterson right here in Champaign County. We'll take a look at the cash grain market with the folks at the Anderson's Logan Sports Facility in Indiana. We'll discuss the weather forecast with Drew Lerner at World Weather Incorporated in Kansas City. Hear updates of crop progress in Illinois and Iowa, Indiana and Minnesota. And we'll discuss a bit of Brazil's corn prospects with somebody who's really enthralled by the idea that you can grow corn and other crops between the 15th parallels anywhere across the planet. And it all happens right here on this Wednesday edition of the Closing Market Report, a production of Illinois Public Media from the University of Illinois.
Support comes from Global Commodity Analytics, now taking reservations for upcoming seminars in Illinois and Indiana. December 2nd in Lafayette, Indiana and Monticello, Illinois, and December 3rd in Jacksonville. Meals provided. Reservations required. Seating is limited. Contact Mike Zuzolo at 866-471-2588.
Let's check now the numbers as they finished up in Chicago for a Wednesday afternoon. December soft red winter wheat at $6.45.5, up 1/4 cent. The March down 1/4 at $6.55.5. And next year's July, the harvest month at $6.61 in Chicago, a 1/2 cent lower. The hard red July at $6.95.5, finished 2.5 cents lower. December corn futures 2.5 lower at $4.29 3/4 a bushel on the settlement price. The March at $4.40 1/4, down 3 3/4. May corn 4.48 3/4, down 4 1/4, and July at $4.56, down 3 3/4. December corn futures 4.69 1/4, down 3 1/4, and next year's July in 2015 at 4.86 3/4, down 2. November beans 13.19 3/4, a 1/2 cent lower. January at 13.15, a 1/2 higher. Actually, November beans were up a 1/2, not down a 1/2. Again, the settlement price there at 13.19 3/4. March contract $12.98 1/4, up 1 3/4, and the May at 12.80 1/2, up 3 1/2, and July $12.76, up 4 1/2. November beans, $11.77 for next year, up a penny for the day. Bean meal at $4.23.30, down 4.40. Bean oil at $40.96, that's up 21. Live cattle futures finished the nearby contract at $132.75, up 7.5 cents for December. Fab at $134.50, up 22 1/2. November feeder cattle at $164.85. up 20 cents. In January at $164.65, up 45 cents. Lean hogs finished the December contract at $86.37.5, up 82.5 cents for 100 pounds. This is Illinois Public Media. Here's what the outside markets look like at this hour. Crude oil futures at $93.78 a barrel. They're up 74 cents. RBOB gasoline, that's the wholesale price, up 4 cents at $2.62 7. Ethanol futures at $1.76 1/10, a penny and 9 higher, and the difference between the two, or the spread, at 86 6 cents wide, is 2 1/10 wider than it was yesterday at the end of the day. Natural gas at $3.56, that's down 5 7 cents, and the diesel fuel at $2.89 8 cents. Up 4.5 cents. Gold futures at $1,268.40, finished $2.80 lower, and the U.S. dollar at 80.92. That's down 0.27 on the day. Here's what the weather forecast looks like as it comes from the National Weather Service for the Urbana-Champaign area this afternoon. Sunny skies, a high of 41 degrees. It's 39 outside, so we very well may make it. Mostly clear this evening with a low of just 26 degrees. And then tomorrow, sunny skies, and we'll have a high of 50 degrees. Partly cloudy on Thursday evening and a low of 34. Friday, partly sunny and a high of 52. And Friday night, mostly cloudy with a low of 40 degrees. Saturday, a 40% chance of showers, mostly cloudy and 59. Showers are likely Saturday night, cloudy and 53. And on Sunday, a chance of rainfall, mostly cloudy and 61. When we start the work week, a chance of showers, partly sunny and 53. And then Monday evening, a low of 26 degrees and mostly cloudy. Tuesday, sunny skies and a high near 35. We'll take a more complete look at the weather forecast when we get to the bottom of the half hour. We'll talk with Drew Lerner at World Weather Incorporated.
Todd Gleason services are made available to WILL by University of Illinois Extension.
Well, you're listening to the Closing Market Report from Illinois Public Media. It is the 13th day of November 2013. I'm Todd Gleason. On the phone line with us to take a look at the agricultural futures markets, Jackie Vakes at Stuart Peterson from right here in Champaign County. Good afternoon to you, Jackie.
Well, good afternoon, Todd.
Anything surprise you in today's trade, or was it lackluster?
Well, it was pretty lackluster. There's no question about it. You know, we're 80% done on harvest for corn, like we talked about this morning. We keep waiting to find out what the RFS standards are going to be. I think, in general, the consensus is that prices are low enough that the blend wall will probably remain the same, but nobody knows until something actually comes out. And, you know, we had a big benefit earlier in the week this week because there was a lot of spread unwinding that went on. In other words, they had bought beans and wheat against corn, and when they get out of those spreads, you know, that means corn benefits and goes higher and the other two go down. Now, I think we've gone back to a more neutral position. I think in general, we've probably seen enough upside on corn considering what the report said last Friday. And so, in general, the big crop keeps getting bigger. That's the attitude. You know, it's kind of like when you go into, you know, rain makes grain. Well, bigger crops usually get bigger, and I think that is probably where we're at. We'll wait for Informer to come out on Friday. They'll give us more information as to acreage for 2014. Beans, both sides of the neighborhood. We don't have any export sales out for anybody until Friday because of the holiday, which always makes for a more difficult time because you lack that direction. I don't know if Nopa Crush is going to actually come out for beans tomorrow or if they'll wait till Friday on that. But, you know, there's still a lot of talk about the ban on trans fats, which could reduce demand. And this is hard to believe, but about 160 million bushels. Now, you know, initially they said they weren't going to do this until maybe 15. Now there's all kinds of different talk going on, so you really don't know. So I actually did a little bit of research, Todd.
Okay.
And if we did lose 160 million in demand, let's say that would happen during 14, we have a projected 170 million bushel carryout, and nothing else changed. That puts us at 330 million. We haven't been that high since 98. But beyond that, you know, when we talk about RFS, we seem to focus completely on corn and forget about everything else that's involved. And there are some rumors out there saying that demand could be dropped by almost 200 million with the new RFS standards. Well, let's say that did happen in 14. All of a sudden, we're at 530 million carry out. Well, what does that mean? The last time we were above 525 million was in 2006. Mind you, I am not Debbie Downer completely because I don't expect we'll get back to these prices. But in that time frame, we traded a range of $1.50 between 5.30 and 6.80. So how realistic is it to think that we could take $1 out of the market or $2 out of the market? We've got great global demand, no question. At the moment, we're all real comfortable because we have extremely tight stocks. But what I'm trying to say is I just think that people who are sitting on grain expecting things to go a lot higher might want to cash out on some of that grain and replace it with a call at some point in time. Guys who have done nothing on November beans for 14 should get something in place. I'd use a put combination spread of some sort, but I just think that there's just too great a risk in the background that we just don't think about very much. And, you know, risk management is not about waiting till you know something. Risk management is about protecting yourself from something happening. And we know that the government can throw us curveballs. We've seen that already.
What do you think about the prospects of the crops out of Brazil and Argentina?
Well, I believe that the crop in Brazil is going to get larger on the bean side. I think that the corn side is probably about where it's at. I think in Argentina, we're probably going to see some additional wheat production come out of Argentina. I think that the corn side of it will probably remain lower than what it had been. On the beans, you know, Argentina is such a tough place because of the fact that they have such strong inflation right now, and they're trying everything they can think of to try and generate income, even to the point of trying to force their exporters, you know, to finance other places. And so I think in general the farmer will do what the farmer normally does, and that is he'll plant in the area that Argentina taxes him the least. And so at this point in time, beans have a big tax on them. Everything does, but beans definitely have a big tax. So I think that'll be stable, and they've had a lot of weather problems besides. So I think that their crop down there is going to be limited more by weather than anything else.
A few weeks ago, we had a really early snowstorm in the Dakotas that was devastating to their cattle herd. Has that worked into the marketplace, and do we know what the real impact might be over time?
Well, you know, it's interesting. Original rumors came out at about 60,000 head. You know, and 60,000 head, when you look at the overall picture, is really not a big amount. It is still less animals eating feed, there's no question. Now there's some question as to whether it was even anywhere near that large. And so, yes, I think it's worked into the marketplace already, and we'll be waiting to see when we get quarterly stocks on how many cattle are out there. the inventory numbers as to what the real. It's just a